We are talking MLB postseason. Indians and Yankees in the 4-5 matchup in the wild card series. And to do that here on Indians Baseball Insider Breakdown, I'm John Fanta, joined today by New York Post sports writer Dan Martin. And Dan, the Bronx Bombers and the Tribe, we know that they've had some great series in the playoffs in the past. How do the Yankees match up with this Indians team?
Well, it's not ideal situation for either team. The Yankees kind of stumbled into the postseason here after a up and down season where they looked like world beaters one week and then they couldn't beat anyone the next. So and they finished the season losing 6 of 8, just playing terrible ball, making errors, not hitting. The pitching's not been great. Aaron Boone, through it all, has said that they'll be fine. The team is too good to continue playing like that, but then they did. So they were, somewhat fortunate to come up with the 5 seed. It came down to the last day. They could have finished 8th and had to play in Tampa, which would have been a disaster for them. So, they don't match up great with the Indians just because Cleveland's pitching is so good. But I think if the Yankees are healthy, which they are, or they seem to be, if Stanton and Judge can do anything, that seems to be a huge deal. And obviously Garrett Cole pitching the opener against Bieber. Those are some of the key things. They have these incredible stars who have not had superstar-like seasons, any of them. Cole has been excellent at times, but not for the whole year. And, and Judge and Stanton should be in the middle of that lineup, and they just haven't been able to stay healthy. And then when they came back from some leg injuries, they have not been who the Yankees expect them to be and who they need them to be to do much in the postseason.
What do you think the key has been for Cole when he has been on?
The Yankees say it's mostly just his fastball. He's been able to control it better, use it better, and I think earlier in the year he wasn't using his his full arsenal, and he's done a better job of that lately. He's pitched very well, but still not like he was last year. Obviously that was not going to be something he was going to repeat, those final 20 starts or whatever after May in Houston, where he was the best pitcher in the world. But he's shown glimpses of that. But it's, I would say he takes a back seat this season to Bieber, which is something I don't think many people saw coming. But if Cole pitches like he can in game 1, obviously he's as good as anybody in the game, and against the Cleveland lineup, that could also help him, because he's not exactly facing, the Indians of 10 or even 5 years ago, where the lineup really put the fear of God into you.
For the Indians, Dan, up until last week, this was not a team that had come from behind much at all. Not a team that was winning a lot of games late. I mean, they had one walk-off win in their first 54 games, and then they put together back-to-back nights of walk-off wins in a pretty dramatic week. But the way that I see it here, the way that this Cleveland team has hit this season, is it simple enough to say, are you as confident as you've been before, that if the Yankees have that lead going into the 6th or 7th inning, that's the formula for them because they do have Britton, they do have Chapman?
That is the formula. Whether it works or not is up in the air. The bullpen has been very good, but I don't think it's been as good as advertised. Ottavino has been very shaky. His numbers are fine, but you watch him out there and he has a great slider, but I don't think he knows where it's going half the time. So if the hitters can lay off that slider, he's not as effective. He has got some control issues. Britton had a hamstring thing, but he's been very good. Chapman missed the early part of the year with COVID, and I would say over the last 10, 11 appearances, he's been pretty dominant. So if they can get to the 8th and 9th, I think they're in good shape. But the bullpen, Chad Green also very good, and they're going to do some different things. They want to get length out of their rotation, out of Cole and Tanaka and whoever starts game 3, whether it's Jay Happ or someone else. But they've got interesting pieces in the bullpen, or they figure to. We don't know exactly how the roster is going to line up, but they've got a rookie, Davy Garcia, who has shown flashes of excellence, but not sustained. They've got Jordan Montgomery, a left-hander who's been up and down, but he could be another weapon that they use out of the bullpen if they want to. in recent years, they've been very aggressive in going to their bullpen. If they get 4 or 5 innings out of the starter, they'll take it, and then they would just go and just try to figure out the last 5 innings through the bullpen. I don't think that's what they want to do. Certainly not in Game 1 with Cole. Maybe more so with Tanaka in Game 2, but they've proven that the bullpen is no guarantee for success.
The Yankees have the leading hitter with batting average in the majors and DJ LeMahieu right at the top of that lineup, Dan. What have you made of what he's been able to do?
He's been just unbelievable to watch, both of the last 2 years. We didn't know a ton about him when the Yankees signed him. Kind of seemed like an odd fit for a team that didn't really need another infielder, or we didn't think. But as soon as he got here, last year, he just settled in. A year ago, he was bouncing all over the infield. This year, he is more settled in at second base. Been very solid there, and then just watching him hit every day is really something. He's the height of consistency. So he's been their most productive player, I'd say, over the past 2 years, and you just kind of know what you're going to get every day from him, which is pretty valuable, obviously, on any team, but especially for a Yankee team where they have guys like Stanton and Judge, and this year Sanchez, who's just disappeared. So you like to have that rock solid guy at the top of the lineup, and that's what they have.
Who do you think can be trusted more, Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton?
It's Judge without question. Stanton has looked terrible since he came back from a leg injury. He's not been good in the postseason. He can't stay healthy. Judge is obviously a more well-rounded player. He's playing he's going to be a good right fielder regardless of what he does at the plate. But just watching the two of them have at bats the last week, Stanton just looks lost. He swings and pitches 2 feet out of the zone, doesn't come close. Whereas Judge, has not been his normal dominant self, but you see more glimpses of that. But from neither of them have you seen what you would expect in 3 home runs, 2 home runs, these 480-foot shots. Those have not been there since either one has come back. And it's been, that they've said their identity is the home run, and Luke Voit has made up for a lot of that. But they expect a lot more from Stanton and Judge.
Aaron Boone, this was a season that the thought going in was, okay, this ball club can absolutely win a World Series. They might be the best team in the American League. Injuries happen. That's out of Boone's control. But how much pressure do you think is on him to avoid that first-round exit here? I know that the circumstances are a bit strange, so that changes everything about the way that we view things. But what's your assessment of the pressure and the job that the manager's done?
He's stood up to the pressure pretty well. He's very unflappable, I would say. You never see him get too high or too low. Certainly never too low. His confidence in the team is always consistent, always high, and almost maddeningly so. When they're not playing well, you kind of want him to call them out, and he usually doesn't. And I think it's genuine. I think he really believes in his team. But when they've had these stretches where they have long losing streaks, and the fielding's not good, and everything is kind of falling apart, obviously the fans want to see a bit more emotion, or someone pounding the table. That's not what he does. So I would say from the external pressure, I think is there. Fans, media. Brian Cashman loves them. The Yankees love him. He's got a team option for next year that, by all accounts, will be picked up, regardless of what happens in the next 2 days or a month. So I do think that with the way the season has unfolded in such a bizarre fashion, they might just say, the injuries were not his fault, and then this is all just a crapshoot here, this wild card round. And but they took some. Trying to figure out where they were going to wind up in this wild card round was very difficult. Obviously, everybody was up in the air, and then they didn't seem to put the pedal to the metal there toward the end in terms of who they were pitching when. So it was almost like they weren't all that concerned with where they wound up. He kept saying they were trying to win, and they were, but they rested a lot of players. They started Mike King in a game that didn't seem to make much sense about a week or so ago. and they lost that game. He gave up a bunch of runs. So I get it. I think part of it is they think once they get to this round, to the playoffs, they'll be fine. But they didn't do everything they could to put themselves into the best position possible.
Dan Martin, New York Post sports writer, is our guest covering the Yankees and the Indians. We're previewing this AL wildcard series. And Dan, it's interesting because you bring that up that, okay, maybe they didn't put a lot of stock of where they fell. 11-18 away from Yankee Stadium this year. And you could say, well, when you turn the page to the postseason, those records really don't matter. But that is a glaring stat. Yeah,
it is. They were a totally different team in the Bronx and away from it in a lot of different ways. So we were just talking about LeMahieu. I was looking up some numbers before not just him. It's LeMahieu, it's Voit, Sanchez, the whole team itself. I think they hit 94 home runs this year. And I think 67 were at home.
Yeah.
27 on the road. So, what they are built for whatever reason, works at Yankee Stadium. Obviously, they've got the short right field there and all of that. But without fans, you would not expect that kind of disparity from being a dominant team, one of the best teams in baseball at home, and a mediocre, below, subpar team on the road. So to that point, you would think that they would have done everything they could to secure home field for this, especially the way this is set up this year with all three potential games being in one ballpark. But they didn't do it, and now, they certainly can win. Cleveland, I think, is 18-12 at home, so it's good but not overwhelming. But the Yankees have their work cut out for them between the pitching staff that they're going to face in Cleveland and their road, issues for whatever reason that they've been. That one win on Tuesday can change all of that, but the numbers don't support them right now.
Dan, the Indians have had to manufacture runs any way they can, the way that they've hit this year. I mean, they're in the bottom 5 of the league in OPS. It's hovered around 680 throughout the entire season. They have been a team that's taken risks on the base paths. How does Gary Sanchez go up against the running game?
Well, I mean, I'm not positive he's going to be catching in game one. Kyle Higashioka has paired with Garrett Cole the last few starts, and the numbers are striking that Cole has been much better pitching to Higashioka than to Sanchez. So we don't know that for sure, but the indications are that Sanchez won't catch in game one, which means he probably won't play either, because I would think Stanton will DH. But he can still throw guys out. He's kind of a mess behind the plate and at the plate overall. They hired a new pitching and catching instructor last offseason, and they kind of revamped his stance behind the plate. Obviously, it's mostly about framing pitches and things like that. It hasn't worked, and what they've done is they've managed to make him a worse hitter by giving him more to do behind the plate, and he's still not a very good catcher either. So they can run, but and the Yankees, especially in the bullpen, they have some guys that you can run against. So we'll see how often Sanchez is even catching. Higashioka is a much better catcher. I can't imagine he catches more than the first game, but that's obviously a pivotal game. So we'll see what happens.
Here in Cleveland, but this is how things are in a lot of cities that would face the Yankees, there's that view of, okay, this is a rivalry and we've got to get after them. At least that's the viewpoint here. Do you get the sense at all from the Yankees, New York at all, just with the way that series have gone with the Indians in the past? We know what happened in 2017. That was an epic DS. 07 with the Midges. Which I think they might be back in Cleveland this week. We'll see. There's some rumors and talks about that. Just, do you kind of get the sense at all that there's that any added intensity for these two teams going up against each other?
Well, I think there could be. It was such a crazy last few days of the season that there really was not much talk about this particular matchup. We thought they were going to play Minnesota or the White Sox. Obviously paying attention to what Cleveland was doing and knowing that was a possibility with those three teams within whatever it was, a game and a half of each other, it seemed like, for 4 days. So there wasn't any build up to it, until yesterday. We had no idea who they were playing. I think in the next, day or so before the series begins, I think those things will will come up. Everyone remembers those two series that you just mentioned. I think what takes away a little bit of it is the fact that Francona not being there, because he's such a big part of, that's the rivalry that Yankee fans think about is Yankees Indians, Yankees Red Sox, Yankees Terry Francona. So him not being around, that'll change things. But certainly it's a much more interesting series and it'll have a lot more anticipation than a Minnesota series would have, because the Yankees have won 37 straight postseason games against the Twins. The White Sox would have been interesting just because of their young core. Nobody knows, nobody in New York really knows who they are. With Cleveland, I think those two, the 17 series with Girardi in the dugout, and that was obviously his last year with the Yankees, so that was a big deal. And those midges with Java and that, those were great times. So I'm sure that'll get fans going. But this is just such a strange year. There won't be any games in New York, so I don't know what that does to New York fans' anticipation or interest in the series. We'll see if how excited the fans get. I'm sure they will, but it's just so different and bizarre this year that it's hard to predict anything.
It is hard to predict anything. One thing is for certain is that this is some destination TV if you like pitching, because this game one matchup is something. And I'm curious here because I think that this answer could vary from case to case. You just brought it up. Not many people know about what the White Sox are nationally. Chicago certainly does. How much have you seen Shane Bieber? Have you heard about him? What do you think?
We have, yeah. He's great. He actually worked with the Yankees' new pitching coach, Matt Blake. So there was some connection there. Just to watch a guy take that next step into where he's the best pitcher in baseball, essentially, or certainly in the conversation, as opposed to just an up-and-coming pitcher. We know who he is, and it'd just be interesting to see how that translates into the postseason, because it's just such a different animal. Garrett Cole, Tanaka, Carrasco, they've all got postseason resumes that Bieber does not have yet. So does he start building an impressive one, or does he need to kind of work his way into that? I think we all know how good Shane Bieber is and how great he's been this season, and I would expect him to be very good in the playoffs. But crazy things happen sometimes with great pitchers not pitching as well in the playoffs. So he'll have his chance to really, and obviously going up against the Yankees, against Garrett Cole, there can't be a much bigger challenge than that.
What do you make of this postseason format?
I think it's okay for this year, because why not? Everything else has been so out of whack, and make it up as you go along. Some of the changes that they've made throughout baseball, I think, are pretty good. I like the DH in both leagues just for consistency's sake. I really hope they don't do this playoff format next year. I do think that they will, because when has any sport added playoff games and then taken them away in the future? But, I just don't think it's been that interesting to see, which 500 team is going to make the playoffs. It's not, I know there's been controversy every time that the playoffs have expanded. And for the most part, it's been very good, because it's more teams involved, more fans involved. But at some point, when you're getting these teams that are barely 500, I think that's when you've stretched it too far. I was looking at some of the playoff matchups, for this first round, and I don't know what kind of ratings they're going to get for some of them, because the teams aren't great. There's the fan bases aren't great, the markets aren't great. So I'm sure the powers that be are pulling for, frankly, for the Yankees this week to at least get through this round and probably to the World Series, because the last thing they want are the Rays and the Marlins and the Blue Jays advancing far into the postseason.
One thing from an Indians perspective that I wanted to get to, Gio Urshela, Clint Frazier, guys that spend time with Cleveland's organization. How would you assess what they've been able to do?
Both of them just remarkable. Certainly Urshela came out of nowhere last year. He was kind of just a guy, just a body. And then Miguel Andujar got hurt, and Urshela came up and just started hitting and never stopped. I know he had an excellent reputation defensively when he was with Cleveland. but he never hit. So with the Yankees, he's hit, and he's been excellent at third base. He missed some time a couple of weeks ago. He had some bone spurs in his elbow, which is obviously a concern, but cortisone shots or whatever they did the trick. And he's been playing very well since he came back. Frazier's been fascinating since they got him. He was a big part of the Andrew Miller trade a few years ago when the Yankees kind of sold at the deadline, and Brian Cashman, was quoted as saying he loved the legendary bat speed that Frazier had. And then after that, Frazier just kind of, has been waiting for his opportunity. And when he's had a bit of an opportunity in the past, he hasn't made the most of it. He's made headlines in the wrong way with just saying the wrong thing at the wrong time or complaining about not getting a chance when he thought he should. And then last year, he dealt with concussion issues. Actually, more than just last year, he's had problems with that after running into walls and things. That's really set him back in his career. But this year, his attitude seems much different. It's hard to tell because we have so little access to these guys now, just Zoom calls and things like that. But from even back in spring training before all this happened, he seemed like a different guy, much more mature. He's taken huge strides in the outfield. He was I would say, a questionable defensive player until this year. Recently, he said that he just had a really hard time getting over those concussions and the fact that they happened on plays running into walls and things like that, and that really held him back defensively, and that he's kind of gotten past that now. So he's done well in the outfield, and in a season when, they, like you said, the Yankees dealt with a ton of injuries and to important players, he was a solid bat in the middle, or not the middle and the bottom of that lineup throughout the year. And now I think that, Brett Gardner has slowed down a lot. So I would expect to see Frazier in left for most of the series, for most of the postseason. Mm-hmm. And, now he really does have that opportunity that he's been waiting for. And I'm sure, I would hope we'll talk to him before the series starts. And the fact that it is in Cleveland, he's talked about that before, that part of his career means a lot to him. And he's a prideful guy. It wouldn't surprise me if he wants to show the Indians that they made a mistake by getting rid of him, despite how good Andrew Miller was. So yeah, that'll be the Urshela thing is interesting, but the Frazier thing, that dynamic will certainly have a presence in this series.
Especially when you flip the page to the Indians outfield, and there's no question Andrew Miller worked out. But Clint Frazier, it's safe to say that he would be the best outfielder if he were on the Cleveland Indians right now. And I think that when you look at Cleveland's outfield and the struggles that they've had, him being out there, it does create a very interesting dimension. This is going to be fun. There's a lot of layers to this series, Dan Martin. Do you have any sort of a prediction?
I just think the Yankees have been terrible lately. So I would think that the Indians might pull this one out.
Feels like it goes three. I think it goes three. I do.
I would think that Cole Tanaka will get the job done. And then game three, I like, Zach Plesac has been good. And J Happ has been up and down all year. So if it comes down to that, I guess my money would be on the pitching, and I'm interested to see more about, Cleveland's bullpen. We don't know a ton about them. I know, Hand is a good closer. So I wouldn't be surprised either way with either outcome. But I just watching the Yankees the last, whatever it's been, 10 days, it's not been good. So who knows? They won a game over the weekend where they like everything was back to normal, and then they got shut out in the final game of the season. So maybe a flight to Cleveland, a change of scenery, and they're back in business, and they could have a long run in October. But with this year being so strange, they could also be out in 2 days, and I don't think anyone would be shocked.
Check them out at the New York Post, nypost.com. They've got great sports coverage all across New York, and we'll have you covered from the Yankees side and all things Indians and Yankees here this week. It's Dan Martin, New York Post sports writer, joining us for IBI Breakdown. Dan, thanks very much for stopping by.
Thanks, John. Good to talk to you.